Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News. This week's headlines. Putin's Orthodox Christian-backed invasion was massively misjudged, says the head of GCHQ. Formula One drivers agree to stage the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix after a Houthi missile attack. The Taliban bans news bulletins by BBC and Voice of America. 5 were killed in the latest deadly attack in Israel. The US trial begins for a member of the Islamic State Beatles cell. Religious groups in Queensland make inappropriate use of their access to public schools. Christian hate preacher Ben Naim couldn't handle a recent trip to the mall. Fox Nation's Lara Logan suggests the theory of evolution is a hoax funded by the Jews. The British Social Attitude Survey shows a record number of Brits have no religion. The head of the UK's intelligence agency, GCHQ, Sir Jeremy Fleming, said President Putin's advisors are not telling him the truth about the situation on the ground in Ukraine. Similarly, the White House says it has intelligence of tensions between Russia's Vladimir Putin and his military leadership. The two countries' spy agencies have so far been shown to have a good insight into what's going on inside the Kremlin. They warned that a major invasion was coming before it started and that Putin was misjudging what he might face. They may be hoping to stoke some of the tensions inside Moscow, as well as emphasize the Kremlin's failings, but they will also know that there are real consequences if Putin is still not getting ground truth about what is going on. That could lead to further misjudgments, including over-optimism about whether Russia can still win some kind of military victory, and that in turn could prolong the war and impact on negotiations. Meanwhile, promises of temporary ceasefires to enable evacuation are treated with suspicion. A missile attack on the nearby oil refinery created a huge amount of doubt as to whether last weekend's Grand Prix should go ahead. Among the assurances the teams and drivers received were that the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who have claimed the attack, are targeting infrastructure and not civilians or events. The Houthis are an armed Islamist political movement that emerged from Sada in North Yemen in the 1990s. They are a predominantly Zaidi Shia force, which began as a moderate theological movement that preached tolerance and held a broad-minded view of all the Yemeni peoples. The Houthi movement has since centered its belief system on the Zaidi branch of Islam, a sect of Islam almost exclusively present in Yemen. Since the 1990s, however, their attitudes have changed, and now the group's slogan reads, "God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam." This motto is partially modeled on the motto of revolutionary Iran, which reads, "Death to US and death to Israel." The Taliban has banned news bulletins by the BBC and Voice of America from running in Afghan media, in a further restriction of freedoms in the country. BBC Pashto reported on Sunday that the broadcaster's news bulletins in the Pashto, Persian, and Uzbek languages had been taken off air in Afghanistan. Tariq Kafala, head of languages at the BBC World Service, said in a statement, "The BBC's TV news bulletins in Pashto, Persian, and Uzbek have been taken off air in Afghanistan after the Taliban ordered our TV partners to remove international broadcasters from their airwaves. We call on the Taliban to reverse their decision and allow our TV partners to return the BBC's news bulletins to their airwaves immediately." The UN National Assistance Mission in Afghanistan described the action against international media as another chilling development. Kafala called the move by the Taliban a worrying development at a time of uncertainty and turbulence for the people of Afghanistan. He noted more than 6 million Afghans consume the BBC's journalism on TV every week. It is crucial they are not denied access to it in the future, he added. Meanwhile, many Afghan journalists who are still in Afghanistan no longer feel able to report openly, fearing reprisals from the Taliban. Many have been imprisoned or tortured while carrying out their work, and many Afghans risk dangerous escapes into Iran. See this video.
امارات چکی شیشتن کلا پرسنل انجینرها و صاحبکارها اینا هم مهاجر شدن. ما هم دیگه هیچی نداشتیم. ما میگفتیم از اینکه بیکاریم و فلان مهاجرت کنیم به ایران.
ما از روی دیوار از مرزی که دیوار داره بعدش هم اونجا همش برجگه تیراندازی میکنن. ما میریم اون طرف که رد شیم ولی اینا همش دروغ میگن به ما که صلاحی اینا ولی که میریم فایر میکنن تیراندازی میکنن.
Five people have been shot dead by a Palestinian gunman in a suburb of the Israeli city of Tel Aviv in the third deadly attack of its kind in a week. It happened in Bnei Brak, one of the country's most populous ultra-Orthodox Jewish areas. The gunman was shot dead by police, a paramedic at the scene said. The attacker has been identified as a 26-year-old Palestinian from a village near Jenin in the north of the occupied West Bank, who had previously been jailed in Israel. The Palestinian militant group Hamas, which governs the Gaza Strip, praised the attack, saying, "We express our blessings to the Tel Aviv operation." Security had already been stepped up across Israel and in the West Bank in the wake of the two previous attacks. The first was carried out by an Israeli Arab who had planned to join the Islamic State group in Syria and had served a jail sentence for security crimes. This attacker drove his car into a cyclist, killing him, then stabbed 3 people to death outside a shopping center in the southern city of Beersheba. 5 days later, 2 other Israeli Arabs opened fire at a bus stop in the northern city of Hadera, killing 2 19-year-old police officers. IS said it was behind that attack. All 3 assailants were shot dead. There are fears of further incidents in the month ahead when the Muslim festival of Ramadan, the Jewish festival of Passover, and the Christian festival of Easter coincide in a rare convergence. An alleged member of a group of 4 Islamic State militants that beheaded American hostages in Iraq and Syria, nicknamed the Beatles for their British accents, faces a US criminal trial. El Shafi El Sheikh, 33, will stand trial in a federal court in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside Washington, on charges including lethal hostage-taking and conspiracy to commit murder. El Sheikh was one of 4 ISIS militants belonging to the 4-member Islamic State cell. The cell garnered attention internationally after releasing videos of the murders of US journalists James Foley and Stephen Sotloff, and aid workers Kayla Mueller and Peter Kassig, among other victims. 2 of the cell's 4 members, El Sheikh and Alexander Coty, were held in Iraq by the US military before being flown to the United States to face trial. Mohammed M. Wazi, a British citizen who oversaw the executions, died in a drone strike in 2015. Ain Leslie Davis, the 4th member of the group, was convicted in Turkey on terrorism charges and jailed. Coty pleaded guilty in September 2021 to the murders of Foley, Sotloff, Mueller, and Kassig. He will be sentenced next month. Coty was a citizen of the United Kingdom, but the British government withdrew his citizenship. The charges against El Sheikh, a UK citizen, carry a potential death sentence, but US prosecutors have advised British officials that they will not seek the death penalty against El Sheikh or Coty. The Queensland Parliament needs to investigate the appropriateness of religious groups using their access to public schools through the religious instruction program to harvest children for the Lord, says a parents' group. In an interview with the Rational Society of Australia, Alison Cortis of Queensland Parents for Secular State Schools said her group would renew its push for a full parliamentary review of religious instruction following the discovery of an online video in which schools are described as amazing mission fields for harvesting children. See this video.
Well, when we found that video, we went looking to see what City Point involvement had in state schools, because we had previously seen that they were religious instruction providers in some schools in Brisbane, and we found that video. And the religious instruction provider that goes into state schools that was invited on to at that church service of City Point had a lot to say about going into state schools as a volunteer, and she was talking about how exciting that opportunity was, and that state schools are mission fields and they were able to harvest children.
It has been a mission opportunity that says in the law, in a legislation, that we as normal people are allowed to go in the schools to educate and to share with school children within school time everything about the gospel and the Bible. It's an amazing mission field. If you're doing 1 year level, it's an investment of an hour and a half a week.
Wow.
And with that, you can have a potential to harvest hundreds for the Lord and disciple them afterwards.
Now, everything she said in that respect is all true. That is the purpose of religious instruction and faith instruction in state schools. They're allowed to proselytise and evangelise by the Department of Education, because there's no prohibition under the law that sets up RI in the Education Act. The only trouble is that parents are not told by principals, schools, PNCs, the Department of Education or the Education Minister that their children, who they've given permission if they have to do religious instruction, see those children as souls for harvesting and their state school classroom as mission fields. And that's the problem. A review is essential, that needs to be done, and then ultimately we would like that to lead to the removal of religious instruction in our Education Act and give that time back to the classroom teachers to do what it is that they're paid to do, educate our kids.
Christian hate preacher Ben Naim had a horrid time at the mall. See this video.
I went to the mall yesterday with my wife, and we were trying to find a bookstore. Big mistake, because no one reads anymore. No one reads. You go to the mall, they didn't have a bookstore in the entire mall because nobody wants to read anymore. Nobody wants to open up a book. They just want to play the stupid, mindless video games and watch the stupid reality TV. Nobody's educated. Nobody wants to read a book. We couldn't even find. We had to leave the mall. I walked in there. I thought I was in a whorehouse. And just women all over, this mini skirt, all the rest of it. Prostitutes all over the place. At least they looked like it. I said, man, we got to get the heck out of here. This is worse than it usually is. I don't know where I was, in Sodom or Houston or whatever, but I came there with my wife, just trying to family outing at the mall, and there's literally I'm not kidding. There was a faggot who walked outside of some H&M effeminate queer store, and he's prancing. He's just skipping around with something he just bought. And I'm there with my son. I'm trying to cover his eyes. I look everywhere. There's whores and sodomites and filth all over the place. I'm saying, where the heck am I? What's going on in this society? What the heck is going on in Houston, Texas? Why aren't there more Baptist preachers getting up and preaching against this stuff? Maybe it'd be a little cleaner. Maybe I can go to the mall with my wife and son and not have to be defiled. My eyes not to be defiled. Just go to the mall, just trying to find a book that I can use for the evening service as a prop.
It wasn't long ago that Lara Logan was a correspondent for CBS News, which is a little hard to believe considering the types of conspiracy theories she's been pushing since she left the network. The latest came during an appearance on the right-wing podcast, And We Know, during which Logan suggested that the theory of evolution is the result of a wealthy Jewish family paying Charles Darwin to devise an explanation for what gave rise to humanity. Does anyone know who employed Darwin, where Darwinism comes from? Logan, now back with Fox News streaming service Fox Nation, asked. Look it up. The Rothschilds. It goes back to 10 Downing Street. The same people who employed Darwin and his theory of evolution, and so on and so on. I'm not saying that none of that is true. I'm just saying Darwin was hired by someone to come up with a theory based on evidence. Okay, fine. Logan rambled on for a bit longer, but her point was that evolution is a chicken or the egg debate, and you can't answer it scientifically. And while we're here, Jews are trying to control the world with their money. The Rothschilds, who Logan says is responsible for the theory of evolution, are a Jewish family that often shows up in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican, Georgia, famously wrote on Facebook that the Rothschilds funded a space laser that started the California wildfires. And now for some good news. The latest data on religious affiliation from NatSen's British Social Attitudes Survey reveals that the proportion of people in Britain who describe themselves as having no religion is at its highest ever level. More than half, 53%, of the British public now describe themselves as having no religion, up from 48% in 2015. The proportion of non-believers has increased gradually since the survey began in 1983, when the population saying they had no religion stood at 31%. The decline in religious affiliation is hitting the Church of England particularly hard. Just 15% of people in Britain consider themselves Anglican, half the population who said this in 2000. The proportion of people describing themselves as Catholic has remained relatively stable at around 1 in 10 over the past 30 years. Around 1 in 20, 6% of people, belong to non-Christian religions. Young people in particular are losing their religion. When it comes to the Church of England, young people are very underrepresented. Just 3% of those aged 18 to 24 describe themselves as Anglican, compared to 40% of those aged 75 and over. See graphic. Roger Harding, head of public attitudes at the National Centre for Social Research, said, "This follows the long-term trend of more and more of us not being religious. The differences by age are stark, and with so many younger people not having a religion, it's hard to see this change abating anytime soon. The falls in those belonging to the Church of England are the most notable, but these figures should cause all religious leaders to pause for thought. We know from the British Social Attitudes Survey that religious people are becoming more socially liberal on issues like same-sex relationships and abortion. With falling numbers, some faith leaders might wonder whether they should be doing more to take their congregation's lead on adapting to how society is changing." That's Roger Harding, head of public attitudes at the National Centre for Social Research. My free thought guest this week is Kaiser Rahman, a member of the Atheism UK Council. It will be starting in a few minutes, so stay tuned to this channel. Come and chat with us and bring your friends. The GAN team will be back with our weekly news review next week. And this week, we have an actual review show in which opinionated people express their views on the news. That's tomorrow. Please watch. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and set the notifications. This has been Global Atheist News. Thanks for watching.